Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells. We're the editors of Manufacturing.net and Industrial Equipment News, and we each have more than 20 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we cover the 5 biggest stories in manufacturing and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You could also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. We're also live every Thursday, so subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can get a notification and join us when we go live. Jeff, how you doing this week?
I'm okay, but I will apologize in advance for the nasally type tone here. I just cannot seem to shake whatever is glommed onto me. It just will not go away. I don't know what it is.
No, I completely understand. I don't know if it's that mix of the unseasonable warmth, but I'm right there with you. I actually brought Kleenex into the studio beforehand just in case. So we'll get through it.
Yeah, Eric's going to have to spray it down in Purell or something after we leave here.
We should just have a Clorox mister.
Guys, any sort of plexiglass that I can put up at this point?
We should have gone.
Too late?
Yeah, we should have gone old school. Actually, just this week we were talking about how we launched the podcast in the middle of COVID. And Eric was talking about the wild setup that we had with just cables everywhere in the middle of our, abandoned office space.
Mm-hmm.
So we could go to that old setup.
Sure, yeah.
Sitting at that 5,000-pound desk, that old wooden desk in that office. Anyway, I'll breathe this way.
Yeah, breathe on each other.
Yeah. Cross-contaminate.
Before we jump into our first story this week, we have a word from our sponsor, ShopVue, a CAI Solution. Managers and engineers face a wide variety of obstacles on the plant floor that weaken productivity. The root of these problems can often be tied to reliance on outdated data. Using yesterday's information to make today's decisions simply won't cut it. So download benefits of real-time production monitoring in manufacturing to find out why real-time production monitoring is becoming a must-have for manufacturers. Click on the link below in the body copy, and it's also in the live chat if you want to check it out there as well. Our first story this week, Canadian Brewery selling, quote, presidential pack with 4 years worth of beer. The trade war between the U.S. and Canada and Europe and Mexico and China and others is heating up. Canadian stores are pulling all U.S. alcohol from store shelves. Brown-Forman, the maker of Jack Daniels, said such boycotts will be, quote, worse than a tariff when it comes to the impact on the bottom line. But more on that later. On Friday, St. John, New Brunswick-based Moosehead Breweries unveiled the Presidential Pack, a crate of 1,461 beers of the brand's Canadian lagers. 1 beer per day of the Trump presidency. The Presidential Pack is designed to help weather 4 years of political uncertainty with 1 Canadian beer per day. The crate costs $3,490 plus tax and deposit, and it's available to residents of Ontario, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia. Home delivery is even included because it is hilarious to think of, pulling up to a dock and throwing this thing in the back of the car. Moosehead Breweries says it is the last major brewery in Canada still owned by Canadians, and kind of a pleasant reminder that some companies can still find a little levity in these increasingly volatile times.
Yeah, I mean, they're having fun with it, that's for sure. But I think it's also smart, To me, it's an example of striking when the iron is hot.
Extremely hot.
Extremely hot. And you're seeing, some citizens of tariff-targeted countries, and Canadians in particular, I think we need to point out, have been subject to some very targeted rhetoric around their sovereignty, which is really on top of this tariff stuff. So, they're a little prickly right now. And I think using that sentiment to find an opening to create maybe a high price, hyper custom product is, in my opinion, a very good idea. And it speaks to the benefit, I think, of being nimble and ready to pounce on those market opportunities as you see them. That's really driving consumer choices in Canada right now. And I think it's a good example of finding a way to articulate your brand value and the legacy, because as you mentioned, the last major brewery in Canada still owned by Canadians. That's cool, but maybe not enough to get you across the finish line in any other circumstances.
Yeah.
But this is not a normal day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, if we're looking at this as an environment of maybe hyper patriotism, this is something you can kind of shout from the rooftops as being a competitive advantage for you. And not to mention like the concept of beer pre-sales in a commodity market like that. That's actually a pretty big win for them if they can sell you 4 years of beer ahead of time. Personally, I don't think I want to buy the 2027 and 2028 beers right now.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how they're handling that. Like if you can just have them parceled out a little bit at a time. Do I have to buy
that was
now?
my point. I would never discourage anyone from buying 1,461 beers. Buy as many as you want.
Yeah.
But don't wait 4 years to drink that can of beer.
Right.
That
Confusing.
will not go well.
I feel like the customer isn't really subscribing to the 1 beer per day.
Yeah.
Especially I get it.
So is this like 2 years worth of beer?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I think it's a
a year.
I don't know.
It's a year.
Maybe
It's a year beer.
Well, I mean, still, you're talking like maybe 4 beers a day. That's still healthy.
4 beers a day.
But I mean, maybe I don't know.
Easy, Mom.
Yeah.
It's not that big a deal.
It's but I mean, like,
I seem to remember pre motherhood Anna Wells, 4 beers a day would not have been outside the lines of consideration here.
I wouldn't have scoffed at that. Yeah, I guess not. Yeah.
Well, I guess it also, it's maybe easier to sell Freedom fries when it's just a single serving. It's hard to make the pro Patriots crate of beer sale when it's
Freedom fries for 4 years.
Yeah. 4. I mean, I'm in again. We'll just set the menu for the next 4 years. Jeff, other than holding on to the beer for 4 years and maybe not having that shelf stability,
Don't do that.
To the point of the legacy, the brewery's been around since 1867, and maybe if with that legacy they've kind of fallen behind some competition, this is one way to really kind of put the brand out there and maybe seize the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of this beer before. I think Labatt's is still kind of like the winner in Canada, right? That's the number 1 beer or whatever. But I was also kind of surprised, in all seriousness, that there wasn't a little bit of a volume discount here. I mean, you're looking at like $2.30 per can of beer.
Yeah.
Usually you buy in volume, you get a little bit of a discount. That seems a little bit high, but, whatever works. The other thing is, and let's be real, talking about the levity of this, I think what this really is all these tariffs have brought out a darker side of our neighbors to the north. I think they are clearly just flaunting their ability to just waste 45 pounds of aluminum with this huge thing of beer.
Yeah.
They're just basically taunting us by saying, we don't even need it that much. We're just putting out these crazy, presidential packages here because we can.
Yeah.
Not because we need to, but we can. How do you like that? 45 pounds. And we're just going to recycle it and use it again.
I mean,
what do you think of that, United States?
I guess they did not specify that these were canned beers. Perhaps they are cartoned.
Oh, okay. I looked it up. They are cans of beer.
Okay.
I think they're just flouting their aluminum hubris at us with this offer. I think that's what this is really all about.
Okay.
So your position is that they're trolling us with cans.
Big time.
When it comes to beer sales, it's Molson Coors, Anheuser-Busch, and then Moosehead. So very popular. I will get more into sort of the trade war tariff stuff. But I thought that this was another argument for legalizing cannabis in America because it's just another thing to tariff. When it comes to
good job sneaking that one in.
The Canadian and Mexican markets. This story was, I thought that it was, I don't know, a little bit uplifting, but also like kind of just a dark sign of the times.
I don't know. We always get a kick out. We've covered these. I don't think it was this big, but like was it Pabst that did a 4th of July? Like,
Oh,
is it
99. The 99 beers. Yeah.
I thought there was one that actually did like 1,776
okay.
cans of beer, something like that.
Whoa.
But maybe I'm misremembering.
Well, so
it seems like we've seen some of these before. But.
Well, I reached out to the brewery and haven't heard back yet, but because this brewery is only 90 minutes away from the border. So I thought, I was kind of curious, like, okay, I understand that it's only available in Canada, but I could see this having a lot of appeal to U.S. customers,
But how much does it cost?
Exactly. Well, that's what I meant. So I was like, do you have any numbers as to how much like traffic or how much interest you've had from, people in the U.S. that would be interested on buying something like this, but just haven't heard back yet.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that would be, for a short hour and a half drive in your F-150, I guess, to just load up 1,400 beers.
I've heard some tough stories about getting into Canada.
Yeah?
From some different people just going to like for a day for work,
Okay.
crossing it like in a vehicle. Not as easy maybe as in the past.
They definitely talk to you. Yeah.
Yeah, just got to let them know. I'm going to buy a lot of beer.
So hauling back a pallet of beer,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Might raise a red flag or two. We'll see.
We'll see. I'll let you know if they get back. All right. Our next most popular story this week: fancy luxury seats are holding up airplane deliveries. According to CNBC, first-class seats are holding up airplane deliveries. Boeing's 787 Dreamliners are in a holding pattern at its South Carolina factory because the seat certification process hasn't been completed. The plane maker made changes in the cabinets and doors for business and first-class seats. Kelly Ortberg, Boeing CEO, called them, quote, pretty complex systems that were taking longer than expected. Airbus is having similar problems stemming from delays in seats and, quote, monuments like closets and galleys that are delaying deliveries. A business class seat can actually have 1,500 different parts. Newest models have seats that recline into beds and even feature their own door. But is it all worth it? Yes, actually, emphatically yes. Last year, only 43% of Delta Airlines sales came from the main cabin. About 57% of its revenue came from selling premium seats. Anna, another Boeing delivery problem kind of kicking the plane maker in the sitter. Though I liked this quote from Ortberg, quote, it's getting the seat certified and it's not actually the butt part of the seat. Are you surprised that seat certification is what is holding up the Dreamliner and others?
Well, no. I mean, the problem here, I think, is complexity. And I was stunned by this figure here about the percentage of Delta's revenue that comes from business and first class in their loyalty program. That's crazy to me. That was like the movie theater only makes money on popcorn type stat.
Yeah.
The other thing that amazed me about this was this contention that business class seats can have 1,500 parts. Mm-hmm. Like, that is astonishing. I don't know. And so I found this report in Aviation Week in 2020 that detailed how even at that time, seat manufacturers were kind of in aggressive competition over comfort and aesthetics and trying to get their business in these major aerospace companies. And it said that delivery lead times had been an issue amid a context of strong demand, and that they've been pressured to reduce complexity and maintenance. No surprise there, right? Mm-hmm. But it said because of that, new players have shaken up this market, the seat supply market, and they've succeeded with innovative ideas at a time when established suppliers were experiencing production issues. Startup companies, they say, begin with economy seats because they are less complex. I thought this was interesting because seeing as there's already been a bit of a shakeup around the economy seat, maybe new companies are seeing an opening here when they see stuff like this about how they can incorporate maybe simpler designs to get a foot in here because, I don't know. Like Boeing has enough problems. Airbus clearly has other, problems too. This was not a Boeing exclusive issue. And so if you're a startup and you can find a way to get in there and take some complexity out of that design, you're going to speed everything up. And, maybe now it's hung up on that certification, but that's certainly not where the bottleneck started. You know that. So, be interesting to see if like there's another shakeup as it pertains to these specific style of seats.
Yeah, maybe do it with 750 parts. You
would, I mean, you would think you could cut like some of those out. I don't.
Yeah, just Jeff, with all the effort that we see put into efficiency, controlling costs, controlling supply chains, would you ever imagine that there were 1,500 parts in those seats?
You know, we get desensitized to that because now we're programmed to think about all the hardware and everything else. So part counts, I think
that's still pretty high.
I don't know. When you look at those seats and you look at how they can be adjusted, you look at all the electronics that are involved with it. At first glance, no, it didn't shock me, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it should have. But I think what a bigger part of this is, I know you're usually the reg guy, like looking through the reports and everything. I actually found the certification regulation the FAA uses for these seats.
Yeah.
It's like 50 pages.
Of course it is.
A lot of it, though, it's really, I don't know if I want to say interesting, but it was interesting to see that a lot of it is, well, what happens if one person's elbow is here? What is the proximity? How likely is it that they would hit the other person? Mm-hmm. And a lot of these other things that are focused not just on making sure that the seat is structurally sound, but that it's comfortable and that it meets a lot of these parameters that have been put in place more from a customer service perspective, it feels like, than just making sure the seat doesn't fall apart, you know? So there's a lot involved there, I think, because we talked about all these stats and where they're getting all these this revenue from. They're listening to the customer. The customer is saying, I don't want to bump elbows. I want to make sure if I yawn, I'm not, I don't know, in the other guy's face. All of these things. So I think it is a lot of short-term pain for these longer-term payoffs for the airlines. The other thing that caught my eye when looking through this 50-page reg was all of the different parameters that have to be set up for proper testing. Yeah. Okay. Can you use this sort of simulated test to make sure that it's going to have this type of tensile strength? Can you do this sort of software evaluation to make sure it actually hits the 6 Gs or whatever we were talking about, the force that it has to handle? Because we talked about that, was it last week or the week before? Yeah. When that Delta plane turned upside down, one of the reasons everybody walked away was because of the seats.
Yeah, because of those regs, yeah.
So a lot of this, I think the airlines can deal with this one. Yeah. Because they've seen it pay off. They know how this turns out. There's an ROI here, not just from a safety perspective, but also in terms of keeping the customer happy when they do pay the extra money for those upgraded seats.
Man. So is this an FAA regulation?
Yeah.
I guess I'm surprised that there's regulation for comfort in that.
So maybe I stated that incorrectly. Okay. It's the certification out. So to get certified.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like you have to do this legally.
Yeah.
But to fit whatever the certification and however that's classified, these are the steps to make sure you can get the seat certified.
Like in order for a seat to be certified for a middle row, you can only have 60% of your body mashed into another human in order to be certified.
Right.
Like if it's 65%, no chance. I mean, talking about the value and the ROI, the CNBC example was incredible. So Delta Airlines recently was selling a round-trip standard economy ticket between New York and Paris during the first week of May for $816. If you move to Delta One, that's their top-tier seat, that same route was $5,508.
Whoa.
So, I mean, I guess I didn't realize the discrepancy was there was that much in between. But I mean, it really makes a lot more sense when I'm sitting back in the cattle car and you're just like, it feels like they don't care about me back here. And then you read that and you're like, oh,
they actually don't.
They do not. Another part of the story that I really took away was some of the things they've done for lightweighting. So they use thinner paper for the seatback magazines and lighter cutlery. And up until this point, I honestly just thought all of that was like a cost-cutting measure.
Yeah.
Just like, oh, they're cheaping out. Look at this. I can barely use this fork. But no, that all goes into just, making it lighter.
It could be
more
both.
Fuel efficient.
It could be both things at once.
Yeah. But I mean, when was the last time you saw a magazine behind the seat?
All the time.
Sky Mall? Do they still do Sky Mall?
No, Sky Mall went under. Sad day.
Too bad.
They're similar. Whatever, there's other, I don't know.
Where am I going to hide my house keys?
Our next most popular story, lawsuit targets Ford Mustang Mach-E's unconventional doors. Ford is facing a new lawsuit that targets a, quote, material safety defect in tens of thousands of Mustang Mach-E's. The vehicles have electronically latched doors called E-Latch, which Ford markets as a feature. The complaint argues E-Latch isn't a feature, but a defect because battery failure or loss of power forces owners to jumpstart the vehicle to open the doors from the outside. The Mach-E door doesn't have traditional handles or a keyhole. Owners unlock the doors by pressing a button on the door while carrying the vehicle's key fob or using a connected smartphone. The car needs enough power to open the doors, and the lawsuit points out that the Mach-E, unlike other vehicles with electronic door handles, does not include a fail-safe physical key or slot in the event of battery failure. The situation becomes more problematic if you get locked out. The E-Latch system also controls the car's front trunk, where the battery is located. But you need to jumpstart the car via a front panel just to access the car's battery. The lawsuit argues that the entire process includes, quote, complicated and time-consuming steps that could prove difficult for someone without extensive car knowledge and the necessary equipment. The lawsuit noted that this could result in passengers or pets getting trapped in the vehicle if they cannot pull the manual lever to open the doors. And I feel like Ford had an opportunity to get ahead of this one.
So before I start, I just want to say that normally we try to not talk about these stories before the podcast because it kind of ruins the back and forth.
Yeah.
But accidentally, I think we all started voicing some opinions.
It was because it started with like just one small opinion, and then there was another stronger opinion, and then it was just, it kind of got set off for a minute there.
So I think there's a very clear point and then counterpoint that will be laid out here. I'm going to come at this from my perspective as a parent and a person that knows nothing about vehicles. To me, this lawsuit alone is going to be or could be a sales deterrent for Ford. I think that it brings an awareness to a potential nightmare scenario for a parent or a person who feels like if something happened with their vehicle and their kid was inside or their pet was inside or something, that they might not feel confident enough to apply this fix or have the tools available on hand. I watched the video on Ford's website about what to do. It seems fairly straightforward. However, it does seem notable to me that they're telling you to jump start your vehicle with jumper cables that you may or may not have.
Yeah.
Which, like, if your kid is locked in the car, I'm not going to go off and find jumper cables. It just seems like maybe a little bit of a protracted process. And to me, as a buyer who's not a car person, seeing this, I would be like, that's a no thanks for me. I just want it to be more straightforward.
Yeah.
And so to me, it made me wonder then why Ford elected to go this route, because it's almost never the case where a lawsuit is the first time Ford is hearing about this consumer complaint, right? The lawsuit itself addresses the backstory in saying that despite complaints from the customers and numerous instances of small children being locked inside the vehicles, upon information and belief, defendant Ford has not taken action to prevent or rectify this material safety defect. So, I mean, that means Ford obviously knew this was happening. People were having this experience and not knowing what to do. Mm-hmm. And they elected not to issue a recall. And that's within their right. Of course, recalls are very expensive. But I do think that, like, letting it reach the stage of a lawsuit means two things. One, you've possibly irreversibly put off some of your existing customers by not responding to what their concerns. And then two, you've kind of emboldened them to make a public spectacle out of this and spread the word about this problem, which maybe plays on some fears that people might have about getting locked in a vehicle or their kid getting locked in a vehicle.
Yeah.
And I think you could like die on the hill of user error, but if it's a complicated and time-consuming fix, maybe not for everyone, but for some people, that might be enough of a deterrent for them to say like, hey, this doesn't work for me. I'm not going to buy this vehicle because I don't, people are also, I think, hesitant to jumpstart electric cars
Yeah.
because they're afraid of the voltages and stuff. And there's just like a lot of, I think, underlying things there that make this not as straightforward of a solution as Ford says that it is. So if I were Ford, I feel like maybe being proactive and issuing a recall right away might have saved them some of this drama around now people talking about it. And I guess, I don't know. I guess my point here is you might think it's easy, but if other people don't, then it's still a problem for Ford.
No, agreed. And I think that it's not just a problem for Ford, but we've seen Teslas have problems with their doors working as well after accidents.
Well, there was just a report that these kids got locked in a car and burned
and died
because the doors wouldn't open, and like people are afraid of this already.
Yeah.
No, so it seems like just give me a key to the car. I just want a key to be able to open the car like the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, they're what was the recall or the one that they fixed? Honda and Kia was giving away the club. You know, so now when you get an EV, they'll also give you that like special hammer so you can smash windows open. So that was my point, is that there's already a lot of people with concern over the door handles working all the time as they're supposed to. Now, on the other side of the argument, most likely, is Jeff. Yeah. And maybe you're suggesting that this is more operator error.
I'm saying if you know how the car works, which if you're going from a gas fueled vehicle to a purely electric, these are totally electric vehicles. Common sense tells me if there's not power for the battery, it's a brick. Nothing works. Yeah. Right? So you can tell when it's running out of power, right? Yeah. I mean, unless there's a catastrophic failure, you should know when your car is, for lack of a better term, out of gas.
Well, but I think that this scenario in particular is around the catastrophic failure more than it just being out of power.
If we're looking at the battery draining, unpredictably, engineering flaw, issue, all the things. Okay. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is being able to use a charger that is basically about the size of your hand, pushing a button, connecting two leads to get to the battery. This took 10 seconds on the video. Yeah. This is not beyond anyone. We're not racing to the bottom here. The other thing is you bought an electric car. If you don't like the handles and the doors and everything else and the way it functions and the way it works, that is your right. Don't buy the car. This is how it works. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying it's an engineering best practice. I'm just saying this lawsuit bothers me a ton because what it did is it took some consumers that were not fully educated on the vehicle that they purchased, and then they're looking to pass the blame onto the person who made the vehicle. That's not Ford's fault. Again, I'm not saying they did a great job. I'm just saying they said this is how this works. And the consumer after the fact is going, yeah, but we don't like it. Yeah. That's okay too, but you can't sue me over not liking the way I made the vehicle. Yeah. You had your choice was to not buy it in the first place.
No, and I get it, but that's a little altruistic. I'm not saying that you have to necessarily make these EVs idiot-proof, for lack of a better term, but you do have to. One of the things that I wanted to bring up was that, so what is the core principle of product design? The core principle of product design is to ensure that products are easy to use, prioritizing user experience and intuitive interaction, ultimately creating a positive and seamless experience. And I'm just saying that we've run into this a lot of times with all kinds of designs where, everyone in the engineering staff is just like, yeah, pretty straightforward. You should know exactly how to do it. And yet for the layperson, that's just not how it is.
David, you could watch this video and in 10 seconds know exactly what to do. And if you are buying a vehicle that runs on electricity and will not function without it, why wouldn't you take the different precautions? If you have this fear, if I personally, was going to spend $40,000 on a vehicle that my kids are going to be in, and there have been reports about potentially them getting trapped in the vehicle somehow, I'm not going to buy it. Yeah. Or I'm going to invest the $80 in the little pocket-sized charger that I can use to plug in and get to them.
But so this is something that you didn't even know about. So for us, case in point, when we bought the hybrid, right, we didn't know that there were different terminals on the hybrid to help jump someone else's car. So then when somebody else was and it wasn't like something that...
But David, that's on you.
I mean, I
That's
understand
on you
that.
to know your vehicle.
I understand that, but like, there should also be, it could have been spelled out a little bit more. That's all. Like, when I went to go and use the battery to jump it, and they're like, no, there are terminals in the back that you're supposed to use. I get that, but like it could be easier, and they can't expect that everyone's going to read that manual cover to cover.
You're saying we've given you the instructions, we've given you the blueprint on how to use something. Now we have to make, like, what are you supposed to do? Sit down with people before they leave the dealership and say, you can't have this until we've seen you read the manual, and you're going to take a test. And then we know that you know everything you need to.
I'm just saying that everyone's ownership experience is different, and you are on the very extreme end of knowing everything about it versus other people that just buy it and feel like it should be easy.
I'm not saying I know everything about the vehicle I buy, but I'm saying if I don't, that's not on somebody else. That's on me.
Yeah. All right. Well, Matthew, who's watching us, says, and it's always good to hear from you, Matthew, and all of that to achieve a sleeker appearance by hiding handles. Prime example of the ill effects of the constant push for innovation and overcomplication of a perfectly fine feature. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Electric vehicles are not bound to have electric handles. I mean, this actually goes into, I think in case you missed it, story. We're like, which we'll get into a little bit later. But this was part of the argument that we had when the story first came out in terms of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like how, like, it's okay. Like crank handles weren't the worst thing in the world. Like turning a key in an ignition. It wasn't like when it became a push button start, like all of a sudden all of society's ails were fixed. Like, I don't know. I think that redo sometimes overcomplicate things. That's all I'm saying. A core principle of product design is to ensure
every single one of those points is subjective. Okay? Because the way one person interprets them and another is different. All I'm saying here is you bought the car. It's on you.
Ultimately creating a positive, seamless experience.
For me, that is positive.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
knowing what to do when there's something wrong is a positive.
Does it bother you at all that, I know it doesn't because of what you've already said, but like if this is an emergency situation, right? This is not like a regular day-to-day situation. So not occurring very often, but like your kid is stuck in the car and you can't open the door without another tool. You need jumper cables. And if you don't have those, say they're in your trunk where everyone keeps their jumper cables. Right. How do you even do this without leaving the vehicle? You know what I mean? It's just, I think it sets off a cascade of challenges for people. And I agree that a lawsuit is too far. But it sounds like they tried to take these concerns to Ford and Ford didn't do anything about it. Just my perspective.
Sounds like there are no wrong opinions here.
David's a little scared.
I'm not scared. I mean, like, but I mean, to Anna's point, it sounds like a worst nightmare sort of scenario for some parents or dog parents. I mean, and the one thing we didn't even really talk about is how there is, if they were stuck inside, there is the little lever for that's in a different spot.
It's a manual lever.
Yeah, but and we could go on for so much longer about how if you've ever been in that situation where you're trying to talk to children about like, no, the lever you open every time get out the car.
My kids locked themselves in a bathroom once in an Airbnb that we were staying at. And just like the 30 seconds that it took to get them out, they were just insane. Yeah. Like they thought they were going to have to live there forever in the bathroom. They're just hysterical.
No,
so I can't even imagine them getting stuck in a car.
No, at the new house, the first time that, it was like I had just enough time to be like, do the boys' doors lock from the inside? And just you're like, yeah, they do. Great. Anyway, our next most popular story this week. Jack Daniel's producer claims Canada's empty shelves, quote, worse than tariffs. Brown-Forman, as I had mentioned before, the producer of Jack Daniel's, Woodford Reserve, Old Forester, El Jimador, and Ford's Gin, recently watched several Canadian stores strip their shelves of its liquor in response to President Donald Trump's 25% tariffs on Canadian-made products. The measures are one of many ways Canadians have begun steering away from U.S. goods. Canada responded with the 25% tariff on U.S. imports, including spirits, beer, wine, but many Canadians have also boycotted U.S. spirits in favor of domestic labels like Canadian Club, Alberta Premium, and Lot 40. Canadian sales reportedly account for only 1% of Brown-Forman's total, but Lawson Whiting, the company's CEO, claimed during a recent company earnings call that the response was, quote, worse than a tariff and disproportionate. Brown-Forman was already experiencing a slide in demand and had implemented cost-cutting measures like job cuts. In January, Brown-Forman said it planned to lay off some 12% of its workforce, about 650 jobs. Anna, I kind of feel like Brown-Forman must be kicking themselves because if they just waited a little longer on the cost-cutting, they could have just blamed Canada.
Yeah, that's their chief objective, is to blame Canada.
Stoke the fire.
Yep. So when it announced those layoffs from its barrel-making plant, the Jack Daniel's parent said the decisions will streamline Brown-Forman's structure and allow it to invest in technologies and brands that drive growth. According to reports, Brown-Forman's sales are down as drinkers are paring back on their consumption of spirits amid an uncertain economy. Mm-hmm. Younger consumers, as we know, are also ditching booze in favor of canned cocktails, cannabis beverages, NA beverages. So all in, the company's net sales were down 5% in the second half of 2024. So because analysts believe that weak Jack Daniel's sales are going to continue to weigh on the company, this scenario with Canadian consumers is coming at a pretty bad time for Brown-Forman. And I think it's worse than a tariff because nothing comes of it. There's just no benefit to anyone. It's just bad sentiment and basically terrible marketing that they have no control over this message. And so now you have these multinational corporations whose customers are essentially bristling at the thought of buying American products, and not for any reason other than the fact that they are American brands. And there's nothing that they can do about that sentiment shift. That's a really tough problem to solve. So I don't know what you do in that situation. Like you try to develop more market share in your domestic market. That is like the toughest thing to do without spending a ton of money. So yeah, it's a tough situation to be in.
In talking about how long lasting that sentiment might be. I mentioned freedom fries earlier, but that was 2003.
And we still know what that means.
And we still know what that means. So let's just say when there are flashpoints like this, they tend to stick for quite some time. And I don't know, can you just change the colors on the bottle and put a nice leaf on there? Say hey, we're cool. I don't know.
They did used to own Canadian Mist, I believe, this company.
Oh, okay.
And they sold it a couple years ago.
Get it back. Get back the Mist.
Why did we do that?
Jeff, one thing that I was kind of surprised by is how liquor so often seems to be the center of these fights.
Well, it's where we start.
Yeah.
Because it gets notoriety. It's a retail product, all of those types of things. I think what we're learning here is when you poke the moose, you might get the antlers. How this tariff thing has galvanized the Canadian public is it's really impressive. I think really when you look at it and you see some of the comments, they're even turning their backs on Wayne Gretzky. Okay.
Oh, no. Really?
For real, because Gretzky has come out and supported some of the things that President Trump has done. They're talking to some bar owners. Apparently, Gretzky has his own line of liquor products, and they won't sell them.
Whoa.
So for the Canadians to turn on the great one, there's some serious solidarity in play here. And I think what we have to be fearful of, or what, keep an eye on is, we're talking about whiskey, we're talking about coffee here right now. And these, as I think the article alluded to, Brown-Forman, this is 1% of their sales.
Yeah.
That's not the concern. The concern, as Anna kind of alluded to, what does this lead to? Does this lead to then boycotts when we look at auto vehicles, things like that come from the U.S.? Are they going to start scrutinizing those things at a retail level and boycotting there? That's when we feel it. That's when it's going to really take hold and make a bigger, go beyond just headlines in a newspaper and really start impacting things financially. So when he says, it's worse that are, not on the same playing field as a tariff, a lot of truth to that. Maybe not for his business specifically, but overall,
for
most definitely.
all U.S. manufacturers.
Yeah.
I think all of this comes back to, and I think the first point you raised on the first story was that this all comes back to the threat of an entire nation's sovereignty. And I think that if you want to look into the fervor, I don't think you have to look any farther than that. Talking about liquor, just today, President Trump threatened a 200% tariff on European wine, champagne, and spirits if the EU goes forward with a planned 50% tariff on American whiskey, which was a response to steel and aluminum tariffs. So this is ongoing. And, we really didn't get to talk about it at all, but we have covered it quite a bit, how bourbon makers in particular really are afraid that they're going to become collateral damage in this trade war.
California winemakers too, a huge amount of their product goes to Canada, and they're worried about how that's going to be impacted as well if they start boycotting U.S. spirits.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, interesting to think about the different impacts between like a discrete product and a food or something along those lines products, because it's so much easier to tell the content, right?
Yeah.
You know what's an American brand versus a composite type product that you would buy where you would not necessarily know you need to boycott it.
Yeah.
If the impact is going to be worse on food and beverage companies, I would assume yes.
Right. I understand that we're making omelets here, but it just seems like we're breaking so many eggs lately. Breaking a lot. Our most popular story this week kind of have a theme. Honda moving Civic production to Indiana due to tariffs. Honda has scrapped plans to make its Civic hybrid in Mexico. Instead, the company is shifting production to Indiana. The company made the shift with tariffs and trade wars in mind. About 80% of Honda's Mexican exports wind up in the U.S., selling 1.4 million cars and trucks in the U.S. last year. Some 40% of Honda's U.S. sales are imported from Mexico and Canada. Honda may still face retaliatory tariffs as the automaker exports some 60,000 U.S.-made cars to Mexico and Canada. Production is going to be moved to Honda's Greensburg facility, which currently produces the company's CR-V models. Mexican production on the next-generation Civic was scheduled to start in November 27. Now, production has been pushed to start in May 28. Anna, still in the rumor stage here and a very long time away, but lots of time for Honda to kind of wait and see how things sort of shake out.
Yeah, as they say, the devil is in the details. And while this makes a great headline, and that is surrounding this theme of like boosting domestic manufacturing that comes from tariffs, I think there's a little bit more to it when you really look at it. For one, Honda has refused to confirm this so far. They told the Indianapolis Star, quote, Honda has made no such announcement and will not comment on this report. The report came from Reuters. Two, the move, if true, as you mentioned, would not take effect until 2028. And to me, I think you have to consider what bigger problems we would all have if these tariffs are still around in 2028. Including the fact that the Civic is made with many parts sourced from Mexico and Canada. So that's going to drive up the input costs on this vehicle if those are tariffed parts. So our American consumer is going to be happy with an American-made Civic that costs them substantially more to buy. I don't know. Is that how we measure the success of these tariffs? Again, I don't know. And I would say, lastly, this rumored proposal comes with a very long runway during which Honda can pivot based on where the cost and labor market make the most sense. And I think that's, by design. No one's making knee-jerk reactions and business decisions based on this situation because, as we've talked about before, it's highly fluid. It's evolving every single day. I think it's very unlikely that any business is going to commit to moving operations based on those threats alone, because to date, we haven't really seen a lot of substantive, things are getting rolled back. It's just, I think for this to be a long time away, that makes sense to me. Plenty of time to shift gears as they watch this play out. 2028 is Donald Trump's last year as president, so they're going to have a lot more insight by then into what is actually going to happen next, I think. But
no, that was one thing with a lot of these stories that come out for me is like, how much of all of this is bluster? How much of this investment will actually happen? Right now, it seems like a really good time to make some really big announcements with some massive investment figures with details to follow. Mm-hmm. Jeff, what were your thoughts on this story?
Well, let's try to remove the political climate from this story for a second. Because if we just saw this headline about Honda expanding operations in Indiana over Mexico, we'd be extremely excited. We'd be championing Honda's decision here and be celebrating the fact that 200,000 vehicles were going to be moved to Indiana from Mexico. We obviously don't. We work in a different environment right now. So if this does come to fruition, this is great, right? We'd rather have them made here than someplace else. So if it does happen, that is a good thing, okay? Whether it's because of tariffs or anything else. So I think we have to keep that in perspective as well with some of this. Understanding it isn't, we don't know it's true yet. It hasn't been confirmed. We haven't really even heard any real dollar amounts or, groundbreaking. Because if you're going to build 240,000 additional vehicles, you're going to have to expand the plant. There's got to be some infrastructure work done here, all those types of things. Nothing on that either, which for me was the first giveaway that we'll see what happens type of thing. And that's the case with a lot of this. What would be interesting is if one of these manufacturers does go through with it, we'll finally have an actual case study in terms of, do these tariffs do the things that President Trump wants them to do? Okay? Because as much as there's a lot of backlash and negative sentiment towards them right now, there are others who feel like this is the way to sort of balance things out and right all of these wrongs that have taken place over the last 100 years. Mike Collins, a guy who writes for our website, definitely is on board with this. I could see it working in a more limited capacity. I don't know about some of these things across the board, but it would be really interesting to see one of these take place and see what we could learn from it. Hopefully Honda still, regardless of tariffs or anything else, I hope they do move more vehicles here. It's good for us.
No, I guess you're right. That is one point that sometimes gets lost in that, is that this would be a great thing. And I will say, like, Mike Collins definitely agrees, but he's definitely much more scalpel than Cleaver.
I would agree,
just in terms of that's one. That's one thing that's great about his, like, many decades of experience, is that he knows kind of what levers to pull, what buttons to push, and like where the unfairness actually is in the market. All right, before we jump into it, in case you missed it, we have another word from our sponsor, ShopVue, a CAI Solution. Managers and engineers face a wide variety of obstacles on the plant floor that weaken productivity. The root of these problems can often be tied to reliance on outdated data. Using yesterday's information to make today's decisions simply won't cut it. So, download benefits of real-time production monitoring and manufacturing to find out why real-time production monitoring is becoming a must-have for manufacturers. All right, in case you missed it, story's not as popular on our website, but could make a big impact on the industry going forward. We kind of teased this a little bit, Anna, but what's your in case you missed it this week?
Oh, sure. I'll start. So VW is bringing back physical buttons in all of its models.
This is like one of those stories where I aged as soon as I saw the headline, and I was just like, and they should.
Yeah. Well, what was so wrong with the physical buttons to begin with?
I like the buttons.
I liked them too. So the story is about how Volkswagen in recent years have been shifting to in-vehicle controls. So like touch screens, haptic, and they started getting some feedback from their customers that their customers hated that. And so after all those complaints, the company has decided they're going to bring back physical buttons for the 5 most important functions in every vehicle that they make. Those include the volume, the heating on each side of the car, the fans, and the hazard lights. The chief designer at VW, Andreas Mint, said, "We will never, ever make this mistake anymore. On the steering wheel, we'll have physical buttons. No guessing anymore. Honestly, it's not a phone, it's a car."
Yeah.
Which, like, yeah, man, I know.
But the entire industry for the last 10 to 15 years has been trying to make it a phone.
I know. They've been trying to make it an iPhone. And study after study has shown that consumers do not like the over-engineering of the control systems on their vehicles.
Yeah.
You're constantly having to swipe to find what you need. There's too many things.
Yeah.
People are hitting buttons by accident. I have a Volkswagen, and the voice assistant is terrible. I don't ever want to talk to her.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And she's very useless. So
Wow. Harsh.
I just think newer vehicles should not be harder to use than older ones.
Yeah.
That is not progress
Yeah,
to
that is
me.
a fair point.
So I appreciate the fact that they're actually looking at this scenario and taking it seriously and not trying to in this race in automotive out tech each other. Like everyone wants to put like a virtual reality screen on your dash. Like, just please stop. I just want to drive it and it'd be easy for me to operate.
No, I have the same thing where you hit the call button and you're supposed to be able to give it a command. And all I've ever really tried to successfully use it for was to call somebody. And it is amazing how a Toyota cannot get the ability to say, call dad's cell.
Yeah.
To actually call my dad's cell.
I would rather dig out my 1999 Garmin than ask my vehicle how to get anywhere, because she is just like, I don't know what that is. And I'm like, of course you don't. It's like...
Well, I like how you've got like the action that this
is what
this AI voice is taking.
No, and even my kids are like, they yell at her when she interrupts us because she always thinks we're trying to talk to her.
Yeah.
It's not. There's no gender to this thing. Its name is Ida. So but yeah, it's like the most useless, annoying feature that I have. So
no, when it comes to useless, annoying features, actually this morning we signed up for Amazon Music subscription because Alexa misheard my wife say something about our kid, and she just goes, "Oh, right, you are now subscribed to Amazon Music." And I just said, "No, cancel subscription." And she just goes, "If you'd like to cancel your subscription, please check your Alexa app or your Amazon Music preferences." And I'm like, "You can't sign me up for it and then not just cancel it. We can't cancel it. That's something more official. You got to go on, check the box." Jeff, Matthew says, "I bet you VW will not have electric door handles." Jeff says, "If you buy it, you should know how to use those handles."
Yeah.
Jeff, your thoughts on this VW story?
No, I agree. It's interesting. We were test driving some vehicles this week for my wife, and one of them had essentially just like an iPad. Yeah. Like as the screen right in front.
That's what I have.
First thing when she got in, she's like, "Nope." It was just an immediate, not going to happen. And the ones that we drove, and you can implement this technology in smart ways, but when you're essentially forcing it as no other option, that isn't going to work. Consumers are speaking out. So yeah, I was kind of like you, David. Yeah, I like the buttons.
What was wrong with the buttons?
I like the old stuff.
Also, it's this weird mix of like when you buy consumer electronics, you know that you kind of get what you pay for. If you want a premium product, you pay a premium price. But in a car, everything is like, what can we get for the cheapest, possible solution? And, for those touch screens, they all have some sort of lag. None of them are perfect. Like, and I don't know. I don't care for them. But,
VW knows that now.
Necessary evil. Jeff, what's your in case you missed it this week?
So I picked a story here, and I think this one was well documented in a lot of different ways, so I'm not surprised it didn't do well, but I think it brings about some interesting points. So the story I picked was Tesla tumbles again as investors bail on Elon Musk's suddenly struggling electric vehicle company. So shares on Tesla this week have slid. They're down 15.4%. They're worth like $220. This is the lowest since September of 2020. We've heard a lot about the different fallout. Basically that Musk is sharing. His personal wealth and value is down like $140 billion, all of these things. How this resonated with me is we always have this saying how a rising tide lifts all ships, right? What Tesla, like it or not, is the flagship for electric vehicles. I think people look at it. I think it's a benchmark. People just make the association with it right off the bat. If they're starting to struggle and there's negative sentiment towards Elon Musk, which half the people love him, half the people hate him, what does that do for electric vehicles across the board? The automakers have made huge investments in vehicles, vehicle announcements, engineering, infrastructure, employee training, all of these things. We've seen some of the struggles with EV sales. We know it has to do a little bit with range anxiety. We know it has to do a little bit with pricing, a little bit of paradigm shift, all of these things. I just wonder if we continue to see negative financial reports for Tesla specifically, more public concern or discernment over Elon Musk, does that reflect negatively on the electric vehicle industry as a whole? Are we past that? Is it a mature enough product that it can survive sort of without the poster child for it that was driving the technology for so long? I don't know. I think a lot of this stuff with the negative performance of Tesla and sales slowing, I do think that negatively affects EV sales overall. Regardless if they're better vehicles, better maintained, easier to service, whatever the case may be, I do think it lowers the priority, the prominence, I guess you could say, when you're going to look for a vehicle because of these things. So I do worry a little bit, regardless how you feel about Elon Musk and Tesla, that it's dragging the whole industry down, which even if you don't like EVs, it's going to impact the automakers hugely because this is what they're pushing.
I disagree with you. I think Ford Blue is ringing the bell right now. You know, I think all the other automakers making EVs right now are just like, hey, remember how we took a non-political stance? Let's keep at it. I know that you say it's half and half split. Right now, his approval rating's at 36%, Elon Musk's. So, I mean, I don't want to jump the gun and say my pillow, but my pillow.
Okay, so then if something more significant happens with Tesla, he has to sell it.
Yeah,
something like that. You think that raises sort of the?
It's almost better.
That for EVs overall?
I think it's almost better I think it's almost better for EVs overall because it kind of opens the field again. Where like Tesla was so dominant, so prominent as an EV maker, and it kind of like opens it up for everybody again. Because people still want EVs, but a lot of people that are fighting for EVs right now certainly don't necessarily align politically with some of the things that Elon Musk is putting out there. And I mean, how many bumper stickers do you see now on Teslas where it's just like Tesla fan, not a Musk fan? You know, like just like I don't support the whatever dumpster fire. But so I don't know. Like that's just my thought. Anna, what do you think on the potential ramifications?
Yeah, a couple of things. And I think it's actually a very fair point to raise. Is this going to drag down the industry? I think one thing you could look at is that by and large, people who buy electrics typically want to continue to buy electrics. You're not seeing a lot based on the data, a lot of people going back to gas. So if people don't like Elon Musk and they want to sell their Teslas, it stands to reason they may buy other electrics. And then secondly, if you look at the data that's coming out of Europe, and obviously Tesla's sales have taken a nosedive globally, in Europe, EV registrations grew in the first quarter and the other brands have benefited. So I don't know if that happens here as neatly because we're right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit more volatile.
Yeah.
But perhaps. And then third, I just want to say this because it bothers me, but like Tesla is like a meme stock at this point. It is so divorced from reality.
Agreed.
Its valuation, like its price to earnings ratio is completely inflated. So for it to lose a bunch of market value, it hasn't been putting up the numbers to earn that value.
Yeah. Ever.
Doesn't
Really?
it? Doesn't it still have like the combined value of like the big three?
All the automakers combined,
Yeah.
it's got a larger market cap than them. Which is outrageous. So in my opinion, but I don't know.
No, I totally agree. And the part that I didn't get to as well is, I mean, this is all tied obviously to sales losses or, decreases that Tesla's seeing, like Anna said, around the world, 45% in Europe, 50% in China. That's a big one. That's a huge one. Down here as well, just not as much. So it'll be interesting to see and hope. Regardless how you feel about EVs, I want the automakers to do well because that's tied to so much for our manufacturing infrastructure and supply chain. We need those guys healthy.
No, I completely agree. Hey, people didn't stop buying pillows. They just stopped buying one type of pillow. All right. For in case you missed it, I picked
an emerging product like pillows.
No, it was the emerging lumpy pillow product. So I picked an interview that I worked on. It's how GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy are reshaping the snack food industry. According to a recent Cornell University study, households with at least one patient taking GLP-1 medication like Ozempic or Wegovy have cut grocery spending by some 6% within the first 6 months of starting the drug. It works out to about $416 less being spent on groceries each year. For higher income homes, about $690 less. And the snack category is taking the biggest hit, with sales declining more than 11%. About 15 million U.S. adults are taking GLP-1 medications. As eating habits change, Food manufacturers need to pivot and do so fast. So I worked on this interview with Misty Skolnick. She's the co-owner of Uncle Jerry's Pretzels. Skolnick talks about a shift to more mindful consumption, with customers paying closer attention to nutritional labels, opting for healthier snacks with fewer calories, sugars, and fats. And Uncle Jerry's was kind of ahead of the curve on this one, always making sort of an all-natural pretzel that doesn't use oil, sugar, or preservatives. They also do something kind of unique that I like. They publish the nutrition label right on the front with the right on the front of the package. She says that snack manufacturers need to prioritize customer feedback and adjust their offerings. This might mean reformulating products to make them lower in calories, reducing sugar content, or increasing protein and fiber for more satisfying snacks. Packaging and portion sizes may also need to be reconsidered to cater to more health-conscious consumers that are looking for smaller, more balanced snacks. I picked this story just because it was something that it's one of those things that you feel like it's going to have an impact, but you never really, I haven't looked into it too much. And I guess I thought those numbers were staggering in terms of how relatively early adoption with these drugs is having a profound impact on the industry. And things are going to need a change. And I know that a lot of people have been talking about ultra-processed foods and other bad ingredients for a long time. But, I mean, I think this could be something that really forces the hands of a lot of snack makers. I don't know. Jeff, did you have a chance to check out this article? What did you think?
Well, I think whenever we talk about trying to make these changes based on those who are looking for a more healthier way to go, some of that is very altruistic. Like, we want that to be the case. We want people to want to be healthier and make these decisions. But I feel like that's the vocal minority in a lot of cases when it comes to snack foods. And at the end of the day, these folks got to sell product. Yeah. And they tend to say, we know what you should have, but you know what we're going to give you? What you want, which is bigger bags of sweeter, crunchier, more fattier stuff. And
dots. We want dots.
I don't want the small bag of Cheetos.
Yeah.
So that's the constant battle we sort of have with a lot of these products, especially because they're in a situation where the healthier stuff costs more.
Yeah.
The stuff we should be eating is more difficult, and all the margins are there as well. We've talked about with food manufacturers numerous times. So it's a very difficult line to walk in terms of trying to cater to what we should do. And there is a market for those brands as well. There is people who want the healthier options, just not as many as those who don't.
Yeah.
So it's a tough one.
But I mean, this is real shifting sentiment. So I mean, if anything, not necessarily getting out of the salty snack game, but having better, more options. And I agree with you. Like, don't tell me it's a healthy snack size just because it's a small bag. Like, you know what?
Right,
I'll tell you what, I'm going to take the big bag of bad food and I'll have a healthy portion. Don't worry about it. I don't need my 100-calorie Cheetos portion that's like essentially the size of a fruit snack. Anna, your thoughts on this story?
I thought it was interesting. I thought it was an interesting interview, and in a huge market category that is snack food, if you want to find yourself a niche there, that's great. Obviously, you then are responsible for connecting the dots for the consumers at that point. And so when you're one of 50 pretzel brands on a shelf in a grocery store, how do you portray that you're the one you should eat if you're taking Ozempic?
Yeah.
So obviously I know that they've changed the packaging a little bit, but you worry if that message is being received in that environment because it is kind of an oppressive amount of choice.
Yep.
So, cool that they're going that way. I wonder if it's effective in the end. I don't know, but kind of interesting review there.
I also really liked her take on shrinkflation. Quote, while shrinkflation may seem like a new term, the practice of reducing product sizes while maintaining prices has been around for decades, often as a response to rising production costs. While many customers are becoming more aware of the smaller sizes and voicing their frustration about the loss of their purchasing power, smaller sizes could lead to unexpected health benefits as consumers consume less. So the second part of that, I was just like, I was like, yes, that is refreshing. Just like, yeah, it's not new. We've been doing that forever. But hey, less to eat, healthier.
Less to eat, yeah.
No, it was just, shrinkflation has been it seems like it's been one of those things where people are just like, well, what do you mean? We've never, what? They're getting smaller? No.
Ours?
Our bags? We'll have to check. Anna, before we get out of here this week, what's your final thought?
What is my final thought? So I'm meeting some friends this weekend. A friend that lives in Minnesota. Sometimes we converge in like the same town in the middle, and we're doing an escape room for the first time of my life. An escape room, and there's a really interesting backstory about a person who is like I think his name is Wellington, and he lives in Wellington Manor, and it's this haunted castle, and he gets murdered, and then I think, have to solve that murder. So if I am not here next week on the panel, it is because I did not escape.
Yeah, you have not escaped yet.
So come send somebody out there to find me. But
to Wellington Manor.
To Wellington Manor.
Well, I hope you make it out.
I hope so too.
Or at least have a good time. Like, is it like one of those dark ones like Saw where there's like a fake body you got to get inside?
I don't know if there's a fake body, but there's definitely like they show the pictures of the interior, and it does look like a fake old castle, kind of like Rocky Horror style. So man, this is going to be awesome.
That is really okay.
Yeah.
My final thought this week is that we're going up north to boil some sap and make some syrup.
Ooh.
And I haven't.
You did the same thing he did last week.
I know. As I did it, I knew I was doing it, and I was like, "Don't notice, don't notice, don't notice."
I'm sorry when I
gotta call you out.
When I listened to that part of the podcast again, I'm like, "Where did that come from? Why?"
You two are really impressed by each other. It's very cool.
Oh,
you're up here.
Well, but it was just, I want to. I hope that it helps my kids have a better appreciation for what goes into making syrup, and just like the shocking amount of like how 3 or 30 gallons of tree sap will yield like a half gallon of syrup.
Yeah.
And like you got to burn 9 trees in order to cook it down. But really looking forward to getting up to the Manti Funny Farm up in Green Bay and checking that out, just because, my brother's kind of a live off the land type of guy. And so he even made his own like sap boiling stove, and it's just incredibly impressive. So I like to go and show my kids how to be a little bit more able-bodied as an adult. Just like, no. See, look at that. How do you do that? He just made it.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, were there instructions? He actually just thought about it. It's amazing.
There's no app for that.
No. Jeff, your final thought this week.
Well, you're doing the escape room. I've found that people's true, like their role within the group gets very clearly defined when you do an escape room.
Really?
Like you'll find out who wants to be in charge, who people actually look to for answers, things like that. It's kind of interesting.
So my friend that we're meeting, her nickname is Captain Planet.
Oh.
Because she likes to plan it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
She's very type A.
Yeah.
So she'll probably be the leader.
She's going to be delegating.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting. You're going up north. I'm just going to enjoy this 2-3 week bubble of basketball. I will not be doing a whole lot the next couple weekends. I'll just be enjoying that.
Just, kick back, order 1,500 beers and
1,500
from
beers,
Canada.
yeah, you'll be good.
Just for the aluminum.
And a very small bag of saltless pretzels.
Hey, that sounds like a party. All right. Before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at in.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. All right. For Jeff Reinke and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we will see you next week.